I've got my cosy crime.
Lull you into a false sense of security.
See, you could sell them for me. Lull them into a false sense of security with the cosy crime.
Now be careful about your poetry book, because it's not what I'm used to.
The poetry's a bit violent.
Violent poetry.
Violent poetry. There's a lot of
Dissonance.
If you like animals,
dismembering of
if you
animals.
like animals, don't read this poetry.
You can see kittens, foxes, badgers, sheep. All of them are harmed in the poetry collection, which is
No animals were harmed in the making of these poems.
a lot
but they
of
were.
animals were harmed in the history of these poems. But famously, I'm more known for the Doris books, which are cosy comedies set in the north of England, all about Mrs. Doris Copeland, who I call an atomic housewife.
Why atomic?
Because that's what she is sure that she is the pinnacle of housewifery. She can do no wrong. So it's a bit like Hyacinth Bouquet, but more violent, more aggressive.
There's a undercurrent of violence going on in lots of these.
The only book that there's no punch up in is the most recent one.
Sorry, Ian's snorting.
Sorry.
And that is simply because I realised that every one of my books ended in a punch-up.
That sounds like his. Again. I think there's a lot of correspondence with what you. Sorry, you haven't said your name on the camera.
No, yes, I'm Charles Heathcote. Yeah. So that's Doris.
Brilliant. And I've got the first one to read.
You have.
What's nice is we've been doing swaps
Yes.
today, and that's a nice way of. It's like being in the Middle Ages, and we're all bartering chickens and.
It's what a lot of writers and
ducks.
poets do nowadays, is just swap their books. I have swapped a lot of Dorises for poetry
Idea
recently.
when you haven't got an audience. Welcome streaming in on the show.
Still in bed, it's weekend.
But yeah, you could tap to Joy as well.
Oh, yes.
You've got former Cheshire Poet Laureate here.
Oh yeah, indeed. A long time ago.
And your Joy
Winkler. So he's a Winkler and I'm a Winkler. We go out winkling.
And these are your collections.
Yes, this one was because of the Poet Laureate year. So Cheshire County Council published. There were 6 of us were Cheshire Poet Laureates, and then the county split, so the scheme finished.
Oh.
So that was.
What
as a
year was
result of
that?
2005.
There were 6 different years, weren't there?
Yeah, there were 6 different years.
And it just stopped after that.
Because of the funding, I guess, because the county
Well,
split.
it was
So
local government
Yeah.
reduced with the county.
it was a really good idea, because the idea was to raise the profile of poetry within the county. So you did lots. We were commissioned to write things, which was a bit.
It seems like a different world now, doesn't it?
My first poem I was asked to commission to write was on Holocaust Memorial Day, and because that's January, February, I had to start it before Christmas, so I spent all Christmas writing about sad things, which was not ideal. Anyway, the things you do for your art, fine.
But we should talk about your novel.
My
Oh, you've got a novel as well.
Morgan,
Is that recent?
yes, we finished our novels in the first year of lockdown.
Oh,
Just because we could.
yeah.
So
Everybody was writing novels,
yes,
apart
yes.
from some of the novelists I knew who just couldn't do anything in
no,
lockdown.
It
It
was
froze
a
them.
strange time, wasn't it? It was a strange.
But it freed some people up to do
Yes.
new things.
Yes, yeah.
Is that what it was like for this?
That was, yes, it was just given. It had been on the boil for a while. It's sort of about a young woman who was given away to be brought up by an auntie who's not her real blood relative, and she thinks it's because she's an evil child. And it stems from a story my brother was told when he was a child, that he thoroughly believed, to the extent it changed his life, really. So it's family stories. Everybody you ask in a family will tell you a different story about the same event.
Right.
Because you all have a different take on it. So it unravels, the whole family is in there, and it unravels what the real story was.
So it's all real people.
Sorry, no, I mean...
Oh, you fictionalised
their
it, so
real
it's...
story,
Right.
Their real
Yeah,
story,
yeah.
So that was that.
That sounds really good.
This one, myself and another poet collaborated on that because we both worked in Star Prison,
Oh.
female prison. We met in prison as the byline, which we did, which is true. So that's reflections on that. This one is because I'm writer in residence at Tatton Park. Do you know Tatton Park?
Yeah, I do.
And I run workshops there on a monthly basis, creative writing workshops. So that
Lovely.
came from that. This one is about... Sorry, I'm
No, it's good.
boring, isn't it?
It's no. You're
Well,
gonna
it's
say,
rabbiting on.
you can't say that.
Sorry. This one is because, as I was telling a gentleman over there, I think everybody has a flower story. So you mention a particular flower, and, oh, I remember when, blah, blah. So that came from that, and somebody illustrated
Oh, lovely.
it for me. Let me find that one. One of the nice ones, that's nice. Mrs. Hudson's garden, our headmistress, and we used to steal her bluebells. Because she stole our accents. She made us talk posh. So we felt quite right we could steal her bluebells. And,
She made you talk posh.
well, I wasn't a Winkler then, I was a Winstanley. And she insisted it was Winstanley. See, like that, talking posh. So, yeah, I had a thing
So you've
about
stolen
that.
her flowers.
And that one is what I think is my best one, because I like a lot of the poems have been published in magazines.
Right.
And
So it's your best of.
I think it is, but that's just my opinion.
Well, I'm looking for a present for my mum for her birthday, so I'm thinking now.
What's she into?
Well, she's always liked. Actually, she likes really violent thrillers. So I end up buying her Mandasu Hella and people like that. And then, to begin with, she loved all the sagas. She loved Catherine Cookson because we came from the same place.
Yes.
Which is how I've ended up writing those kind of sagas as well, part of the time. Because when I was little, those books were just in the
there.
house. And I mean, as a kid, I picked up everything that was in the living room. So it was, whether it was James Herbert or Stephen King or Catherine Cookson or Barbara Taylor Bradford, I'd read them all before. I even, without even thinking about it, you just absorb stuff, don't you?
In this one, there's a book called Library Books, because I was sent to the library as a child to get mums, she liked thrillers, dads liked westerns, and Mrs. Allen down the road liked love books. So
You were
go by the
trusted to go
spine.
and-
You could only have 2 a week,
Yeah.
because I'm old. And,
Well, it used to be 3, I think, when I was a kid. And then suddenly it went up like ridiculous.
Yeah, it did. So the book is about the each one's how they
So they
imagine.
were colour-coded, were they?
Yes. Look, it was on the spine. There'd be a rose for the love books, a lasso for the westerns, and a gun for the thrillers. So I just raked them all off. The point being, though, I didn't know what I liked. What
Right.
books do I like?
Yeah.
And as an untutored reader, I just went from A along the...
And did that
sea
work
watch
for
up
you?
to- I read a lot of Angela Brazil. And there was one...
What were they ballet ones or school stories?
Angela Brazil was school stories.
Right.
The ballet one was Noel Streatfield's
Oh, yeah. Ballet shoes and, yeah.
And the copy, it mentions it in the poem, the copy of ballet shoes in Barnes Library smelled of talcum powder. So I borrowed it several times. It was
That's
just
a
matched
great,
up a
that's a
book.
poet's detail, isn't it, that?
Yeah.
Ballet shoes smelled of talcum powder. Could be worse.
It could be worse, yeah.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Nice to chat. I'm going to have a look in a minute when I've... I'm boiling today.
You keep saying that. I'm absolutely frozen.
Have you had a
no.
drink yet?
This is
Have you
I had a
had
cup of tea, yeah.
brilliant.
You're basking in it, aren't you?
Survived an hour last night.
No, it was
I said last weekend I was in California.
Every item of clothing that we possessed on it, we were still clothed.
That makes it sound like we haven't got many items.
Oh, thank you.
5 layers as
Oh,
well.
John, do you want to talk about yours? You've told me in person, but you haven't done it on camera for YouTube.
Well, mine is really a family history set as a novel. It tells the story of my father, my uncle, and 3 cousins who were dragged into the Second World War. They all came from a tiny village in Romania called Maldorf, which was part of a sort of German exile community since the 13th century. So they've been there a long time, living peacefully, and towards the end of the war, Hitler was running out of people to manage campaigns, and he was losing the war, and he decided to draw people in from the German exile communities all dotted around Europe, and unfortunately my dad and uncle and aunties were all
Drafted.
well, he was drafted with my uncle after the war. The Russians effectively invaded Romania, were given control of Romania, and they took all the young people, including 3 of my aunties, into labour camps. It's part of rebuilding Russia.
Yeah.
So it's quite echoes of today, really. I
Yes,
guess.
I was thinking what.
One of the interesting things in the book is the contrast between my auntie's appalling experience in Russian labour camps contrasted to the less horrendous experience of my father and my uncle in British
Right.
prisoner of war camps, where they had a tough life, but they were well treated,
Treated
and
decently.
eventually some stayed after the war, like my dad,
Stayed in the country.
whereas others went back. My uncle went back because he had a family, had a wife, and
So how old were you when you realised there's this family history, kind of this complicated family history? Were you little?
I'd been, yeah. When my dad was alive, we had probably 2 or 3 trips back to Germany.
Right.
The family after the war had managed to re-establish themselves in South Germany. They didn't go back to Romania because it was still communist. They set up a really good life in South Germany. So we had several trips while I was a kid, up to the age of 7, meeting. So
you're
all,
well integrated.
yeah,
and
well into, and so I was picking up bits and pieces, and then after my dad died, we had a few more trips, and we've been going backwards and forwards to Germany. And one of my cousins was a prime mover in helping me put together the novel. She's very keen to.
So was it always in your head that you wanted to tell the story in novel form? Or was
it had been. I don't so much know about novel form, but I've always felt it was an interesting story. And
As a historian,
being a historian. But then when I realised there were quite a few gaps in knowledge. I mean, I knew the basics of the story are correct, but like where were they fighting, which front were they fighting on, and where when they were captured, where I've picked up bits of information, but the novel allows you to have a bit more license.
to invent?
Yeah, and when my dad was working down the pit, you see, as a prisoner of war, I don't know how he was treated. I know initially he was treated as a pariah.
Yeah.
But eventually I know that he became very popular because I've seen evidence of that in books that have been written about the pit village. So I've invented a few scenes where he was being.
It's kind of like imagining yourself into it, isn't it?
Yeah,
There's always going to be gaps, but you've got to put yourself.
Yeah.
Which is why I suppose you've got the first person
Yeah, that's why I did
narratives.
it.
You've got to do it in their shoes.
Absolutely. There's a scene in there. I'll not give you too much information, but it's set in the Pithead Baths. You know, when the miners came off the shift, they were filthy.
Yeah.
And the pits always are brilliant, underfloor heating, fantastic showers. So there's a scene in there which is probably the one I've most imagined, but it's got it's got an interesting.
I find that fascinating that
Yeah.
you have to. You can't, as a historian, you can't kind of make those leaps, but as a novelist, you can.
Exactly.
You have to.
A lot of people don't get that. I mean, I've had friends who would say, "Yeah, well, how much is it? 70% true?" Is it
It's not a recipe.
Yeah, so it's been quite, for some people it's quite difficult to get that concept over.
But we've always had that. We've always had historical fiction, haven't we?
Yeah.
It's not a new
Yeah,
idea.
that's really, I would guess if I'm looking at my own reading interest, that's probably my most interesting genre. You know, there was a guy called Sanson, isn't it? Sanson.
Oh, yes.
What's Sanson?
C.J. Sanson.
He's there's a series of novels, isn't it? It's that type of thing that really appeals to me as well.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, John.
What do you do with this stuff?
YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel where I talk about books all the time, every day.
Oh, brilliant.
And usually it's just me talking to the cat in my study about what I'm reading, but it's quite good to go out.
Is this where Charlie, have you got a YouTube channel as well?
I've got a YouTube channel, yes, just Charles Heathcote.
like and subscribe.
Yeah. Maybe I'll venture into the new world.
You could do.
Listen. Well, I've got that on camera.
It's usually Joy, how do I get into...
How do I do this? How do I do this?
How do I do
Well-
a screenshot, Joy?
Give it a go. Charlie manages.
I manage, but yeah, I'm doing it incredibly simple.
But you edit.
I edit, yeah.
I don't edit. I sit down for 25 minutes and just talk to camera, and because people do really whizzy things with edits and they look really professional.
I generally just cut out whenever I said something too offensive.
I don't even use a microphone now.
Violence, yeah.
We
Right.
occasionally, or Joy occasionally, hands over the chairing of the Poems and Pints once or twice a year to Charlie, but we do it at our peril, don't we?
Yeah.
It's
I have a
usually-
talent for insulting people, as I've been told.
Pleasantly.
Yeah.